James Napartuk was born here in Prevernatook on the shores of Hudson's Bay. He is a hunter, an educator, an expert outdoorsman. He works for a local program that takes offenders out on the land. James and others teach them to hunt, fish, or build a cabin. It helps them reconnect with their roots and steers them away from the confines of incarceration down south. It's one of a handful of projects in northern Quebec that offer an alternative to the criminal justice system. Inuit overrepresentation in the court system has reached critical levels in Nunavik. The Inuit are incarcerated at a rate 6 times higher than other Indigenous groups in Quebec. The justice system is struggling to keep up.
Il ne faut pas importer ce qui se passe au sud. Ici, tout est différent. Je vois le clash, je vois que ça fonctionne pas. On diminue pas les dossiers là, actuellement, je peux le dire.
Because of the region's isolation and lack of infrastructure, offenders as well as their victims are not entitled to some of the same legal rights as other Quebecers. The Inuit want to regain control of their justice system.
We're like anybody else that wants to have their own control and not to be run by somebody else.
2 visions of justice, one from the south, the other from the north, are at a turning point. George Hawkeye is a Kujwak resident. He competes in snowmobile and dog sled races. A longtime hunter, he shares his catches with the community. He first got to know the justice system as a police officer some 15 years ago.
I grew up in a poor neighborhood or poor family, in poverty. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to become a police officer, is just to help people in need.
After 3 years with the force, he turned in his badge. Then, in 2011, things veered off course when he came to blows with a former colleague.
Do you know where that rage came from?
I think it was all the stressors in my life. My childhood, the policing, the stress from the policing. I ended up injuring a police officer pretty bad, and I wanted to commit suicide.
George ended up on the wrong side of the law and faced the many stumbling blocks of the justice system in Nunavik, starting with delays in court appearances.
There was nobody to take care of my case, so I had to sit in prison, wait for a lawyer, wait for the court system to come in, or everybody was on their weekend off. I just stayed in prison, ate chicken wings and fries all weekend, takeout food. That was delivered cold and soggy.
Several defense attorneys told us that delays in getting a first hearing still routinely exceed the 3-day limit required by the criminal code. And that's despite the introduction in 2020 of video conferencing during the pandemic.
The system was created by white people, people from the south, so it's not made for Inuit. People don't even know how to contact a lawyer when it's their first time.
There is no permanent detention facility in Nunavik. The accused awaiting trial have to be flown down to Saint-Jérôme in the Laurentians or Amos in the Abitibi region, thousands of kilometers away from home.
So we had to take a 2-hour flight down to Montreal, and in Montreal we had to wait for the van that was going to transfer us to the prison. A hard seat, uncomfortable, locked up in a little van and driven 6-7 hours all the way to Amos from Montreal. All the delays, the time I had to suffer in prison.
In order to hold trials, the justice system itself travels to 9 of the 14 Nunavik communities with what is called the Circuit Court. The Circuit Court was put into place in the 70s in the wake of the James Bay crisis, with the intention of bringing justice to northern communities. But it has long been tagged with the unflattering label of Circus Court. Jean-Pierre Larose spent nearly 40 years policing the Greater Montreal area before he was recruited in 2018 by the Nunavik Police Service. He is Nunavik's Chief of Police and Director of Public Security.
La cour itinérante ici au Nunavik, je crois qu'elle fait son possible, mais à mon avis, mon constat, c'est qu'elle est un peu dépassée et on a un volume de dossiers incroyable depuis que je suis arrivé. Ça l'a presque doublé.
Out of a population of 9,000 adults, 1,400 people on average are charged with at least one criminal offense every year. Most of the cases stem from social issues, such as lack of housing or substance abuse. That rate is 20 times higher than the provincial average.
Je pense qu'on peut le voir, là, les rôles en ce moment. On arrive ici, il peut y avoir jusqu'à 250 personnes qui vont se présenter devant la cour chaque semaine de cours.
In early October at the Kuujjuaq courthouse, some of the cracks in the system became apparent.
Comme vous avez pu voir, la semaine de cours s'est un peu écroulée comme un château de cartes, là, malheureusement.
Arctic weather can be unpredictable. Gusting winds prevented 2 flights transporting the accused and witnesses from taking off from another village. Dozens of files needed to be postponed. Business as usual in Nunavik. The judge who was presiding over the court here for the first time expressed her dismay at all the delays.
On est rendu en 2023, là.
En fait, ça irait, le calendrier se termine en août 2022, c'est la dernière date là, qu'il y a.
Là, est-ce que c'est parce qu'il n'y a pas de date, il n'y a pas de personnel, c'est parce que les avocats sont pris ailleurs ou il n'y a pas de juge?
This detainee has just arrived at the Kuujjuaq courthouse from Saint-Jérôme 24 hours later than expected. The authorities had initially prepared the wrong detainee for the trip. They rushed to send the right person to Kuujjuaq and had him travel for over 18 hours. Léa Febraro is his lawyer.
Il est parti, je pense, à Saint-Jérôme hier à 16h, puis il arrive à Amos dans la nuit, puis ensuite ils l'ont réveillé pour le ramener à Kuujjuaq ce matin. J'en comprends là qu'il est debout depuis 3h du matin pour voyager, si ce n'est la nuit.
Despite everything, his case was never heard. The judge is not a regular on the circuit court, and she decided not to start a trial she would not be able to finish.
Si vous n'êtes pas capable, je m'embarque pas là-dedans. Je suis pas pour faire un voyage juste pour ça, ça n'a aucun sens, là.
Ça fait combien de temps qu'il est en détention sans savoir quand est-ce qu'il va avoir son procès?
Ça fait depuis juillet, donc ça fait 3 mois. Et puis l'idée, c'était d'avancer le plus vite possible. Alors c'est sûr que c'est décevant.
His case had to be postponed for several months until the circuit court returns to the area with another judge. Until then, this man will have to be sent south, back to the Saint-Jérôme detention facility.
Oui, c'est problématique le fait qu'il n'y ait aucun centre de détention dans le Grand Nord du Québec.
Laurent Rivet is a defense lawyer.
C'est quand même très difficile quand les gens vivent à Kuujjuaq, doivent être transportés à Amos, Saint-Jérôme. Leurs familles ne sont pas en mesure de leur amener tout ce qui est vêtements et autres. Donc ça, c'est assez problématique. J'ai beaucoup de familles qui m'appellent parfois pour essayer de savoir comment ils peuvent entrer en contact avec leurs enfants qui sont détenus.
George spent 20 days in detention before he could get his bail hearing. At the trial, the lawyer he hired at his own expense managed to get him sentenced to house arrest. George was able to avoid being exiled in a prison down south.
What would have been the impact of losing you and the community losing someone like you for a year, for example?
It was a big impact just losing me for 20 days, I'm sure. I provided for families going hunting. I shared my catches all the time. I was also involved in the youth committee, just helping out the community in general.
Intermittent sentences that are served on weekends are routinely given by Quebec courts, but not in Nunavik.
On n'est pas en mesure de donner des sentences discontinues toute période en bas de 90 jours, ce qu'on pourrait permettre aux personnes de maintenir leur emploi et de venir faire leur période de détention pendant les fins de semaine. C'est des sentences qui sont couramment donné dans tous les autres districts judiciaires. Malheureusement, on ne peut pas le faire dans le Grand Nord du Québec. Mais oui, clairement, c'est pas la même façon de fonctionner à Longueuil qu'à Coudjouac, effectivement.
Allez!
Pavernatuk is home to 1,800 people. It has one of the highest rates of suicide and domestic violence in Quebec. There is no shortage of inmates in these holding cells. Detainees who are flown in from Amos for a court appearance are held here, along with people who've been recently arrested. These cells have been known to hold up to 6 or 7 people at a time. In order to reduce the number of arrests over matters such as family conflict, the police and the Regional Board of Health joined forces in 2019 to create a mobile intervention team. 5 nights a week, a police officer and a social worker pair up to intervene where needed in the community. Things are quiet for now. The team stops at a house to follow up on one of their most recent calls. Their objective is simple: calm things down, de-escalate conflicts, and direct people who are in crisis to other health services instead of the police station. Aileen McKinnon is the former chief of the Nunavik Police Service. She now works for the Regional Board of Health. She created the program.
They may take a person to the hospital, they may take a person to another house, they may just be there to help speak with the person. But that program has helped reduce the number of people ending up in detention. So they're actually helping improve a lot of relationships within the community.
Despite efforts to recruit Inuit personnel, most of the police officers come from the south, and relations with the local population tend to be strained.
J'ai du travail à faire chez mes policiers aussi, en termes de culture et d'approche et tout ça, parce que j'ai beaucoup de jeunes policiers inexpérimentés qui sont formés dans une perspective urbaine. Il faut comprendre par où ils ont passé pour mieux intervenir.
Jeannie May has much to say about justice in Nunavik. She's a member of one of the most famous families in the region. Her aunt, Mary May Simon, is Canada's Governor General.
It was an honor to know that an Inuk and my aunt was nominated.
5 years ago, Jeannie was embroiled in a domestic dispute and reached out to the police.
I called for help to the police and in turn was violently arrested, which traumatized me tremendously. I think the justice system takes way too long up here to resolve issues. I've known some people literally leave Coudjouac just to have that space from their abuser. If things could be resolved in a timely manner, then we could move forward. The victim, the abuser, whoever. We need that resolution to be able to move forward.
For prosecutors whose role is to support victims and bring perpetrators to justice, the heavy workload can seem daunting.
L'éloignement géographique aussi fait que c'est assez difficile pour nous de créer le contact avec les plaignants, avec les victimes.
The turnover rate amongst the 20-odd prosecutors working in Nunavik is high. The Amos office, which provides legal services in northern Quebec, has seen 14 attorneys leave since 2019.
Quand je suis arrivé, il y avait des procureurs de la Couronne qui étaient ici en permanence. Ils ne sont plus ici. Il y avait l'aide juridique. Ils ont quitté également. On a besoin de services supplémentaires, mais on nous en enlève. Oui, une cour de justice permanente, mais transformée. Pas une cour de justice comme on voit au Sud. Elle doit être adaptée à la culture et impliquer les Inuits dans le processus.
The Inuit had their own way of dealing with people that created problems in the communities.
The Makivik Corporations represents the Inuit in their dealings with the governments of Canada and Quebec. It signed a protocol with Quebec in order to set up justice committees. Justice committees help offenders navigate the legal process and offer alternative sentences based on cultural values, such as restorative justice and community harmony. This footage of a Justice Committee was provided to us by the Makivik Justice Department.
They can meet with the person that's being charged to try to help out that person and to understand his or her rights, and at the same time using our culture, how we did it in the past.
Makivik ko atago pinsutiha taylor mata inyumit ikarayak ko sa marumil sa iyak ko sa marumil.
The people we spoke to say that resources and preventive measures are sorely lacking. In a special report table in 2016, the Quebec Ombudsman noted that sentences do not dissuade people struggling with addiction, and that solutions to social problems must not be solely dependent on the justice system.
Instead of being sent down for drunk driving, like it's recurring too often, if we deal with it in our community and talk with the people, maybe we can find solutions instead of sending them out of the region.
But less than 2% of files are transferred to justice committees, and they're mostly for minor offenses such as mischief or theft. The vast majority of crimes, breach of conditions, impaired driving, and family conflict are processed through criminal court.
Au sein du protocole, il y a évidemment, c'est pas tous les crimes qui sont référables. C'est nous, les procureurs terrain, qui vont référer les dossiers, mais on le fait dans la limite de ce qui est autorisé par ce protocole-là. Mais pour l'instant, c'est le cadre dans lequel on doit travailler.
The meaning of the word sayuk is a change in the wind's direction. It is the name given to a program that, much like justice committees, offers an alternative to the judicial system. The goal is to rehabilitate offenders through traditional practices on the land. These educators just returned from a walrus hunt on Hudson's Bay. Their client, the man who caught the walrus, has had a brush with the law. They're stuffing meat into pockets of fat that will ferment for 2 months until it's ready to be shared at a community feast.
We go camping, hunting, fishing, so they can stay out of trouble in town. We take them out on the land where there's no trouble, so it's a big improvement for the clients. We went to the Ottawa Islands, about 160 kilometers from here. They're comfortable to speak with their own language. They can talk to us their problems.
This program is considered a success, and it is slowly expanding to other communities.
It can help in that it gives people something else to do. It gives them an activity. If you go hunting for a full day, you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if you come back with your catch, it gives you the sense of pride because you're going to be sharing not only with your family, but with the community. It works because we have some clients who have not returned to the justice system, so that shows it's working.
Makivik, which oversees many of the alternative justice programs, would like to see the committees handle a greater range of offenses and receive additional funding.
The system has to adapt to the region, put a proper infrastructure in the region, have people in the communities that can deal with them instead of having traveling courts going into the communities. That's why I'm saying that we should have our own system in place that we can administer ourselves.
Shortly after our trip to Nunavik, Quebec's Justice Minister Simon-Jolin Barrette announced that he had commissioned a report on the situation in collaboration with Makivik.
Il y a eu déjà beaucoup de rapports critiques sur la situation de la justice au Nunavik au fil des décennies. Pourquoi un autre rapport à ce stade-ci?
Dans les rapports, souvent, c'est les grands principes qu'on a. Arrivez-moi là, avec des solutions pratico-pratiques qui vont être, réalisables, qui ne seront pas du pelletage de nuages, puis qui vont nous permettre vraiment d'avancer. Bien, pourquoi on ne changerait pas nos pratiques pour faire en sorte que ça fonctionne mieux, qu'il y ait une adhésion au système de justice aussi des membres de la communauté inuit?
Est-ce que vous êtes prêt à voir un changement structurel qui donnerait plus de pouvoir aux Inuits sur leur système de justice?
Puis je suis ouvert à des modalités qui vont faire en sorte de pouvoir adapter le système de justice. Mais sur le fait de déléguer ces pouvoirs-là, il faut juste faire attention pour être certain que la justice sur le territoire québécois s'applique de la même façon. Il ne faut jamais oublier que sur le territoire québécois, c'est le rôle de l'État québécois de venir administrer la justice.
George Hawkeye is grateful that he was able to serve his sentence at home and get the court's permission to take care of his dogs.
I have to go feed them every now and then. So I got an hour to do this daily. And just that 1 hour of freedom, going to my dogs when I was on house arrest, helped me so much.
There's the whole community right in front of the marina.
This former police officer is now working on setting up a new organization that will fight to protect Inuit rights in terms of access to health services, education, and justice.
There's so much stuff that we can't do because of a criminal record up here. And we're a small community trying to thrive. I wanted to run in local politics to help out the community and try and make things, or try and improve things within the community. And the criminal record just stopped me from doing that. And I wanted to work in different fields, and criminal record just stopped me, you know?
This imposing a system on a culture, we can obviously see it's not working. So we need to be given more responsibility, more power over ourselves to be able to resolve these issues rather than be falling into the cracks of the system. That's not even part of our culture.